fight fans, here's what everyone needs to understand right now. Arman Tsarukyan just dropped a bombshell by crowning himself the official White House backup fighter, and this move carries serious weight. What makes this absolutely fascinating and frankly maddening is the ice-cold response from the organization's power players. Instead of getting the celebration and recognition you'd expect, we're witnessing a brutal reality check that exposes everything wrong with this situation. This isn't some throwaway social media boast from a random contender. This declaration reveals the massive underlying tension simmering between Arman and the UFC brass. When a proven elite fighter steps forward to claim his rightful position and the promotion responds with deafening silence, it ignites every conspiracy theory that's been building for months. Is Dana White subtly dismissing Arman without having the courage to say it directly? Maybe the UFC refuses to endorse any claim that didn't come through their official channels? Could this be a calculated power move against a fighter bold enough to determine his own fate instead of begging for scraps from the organization? This suffocating silence, this complete absence of official backing from the promotion, perfectly captures why countless fans believe Arman gets consistently disrespected and systematically overlooked by the very system that should be showcasing him. Just so we're crystal clear on this situation, the analyst delivers a devastating observation that cuts straight to the core of this controversy. Arman has absolutely earned first dibs on that backup position through relentless dedication and unmatched commitment to excellence. Yet the fact that someone needs to publicly advocate for getting his contract sorted, ensuring he's properly licensed and ready, arranging his travel logistics, reveals the broken machinery operating behind closed doors. Why isn't this already an automated, formalized procedure for the undisputed #1 contender in any division? Consider this reality for a moment. This represents basic common sense for any major pay-per-view that could implode overnight. It's fundamental risk management for the UFC as a corporate entity. The necessity of having this conversation at all, people having to campaign for these elementary preparations, suggests serious hesitation and reluctance from the promotion to properly invest in Arman to the level his dedication and proven track record absolutely demands. He's perpetually stuck campaigning for a role that his actions have unquestionably proven he deserves to have secured already. This forces fans to repeatedly ask the same infuriating question: why does the organization make him battle just as ferociously outside the octagon for basic recognition and professional respect as he does inside it during actual competition? This entire mess serves as a brutal reminder of the absolute nightmare Arman endured after the Islam Makhachev fight collapsed. That whole disaster still burns with unanswered questions. The spine-chilling detail about Dana White getting that phone call at 1, 2, 3 in the morning, literally during the dead of night, demonstrates the extreme stakes and shocking suddenness of whatever actually transpired. Yet we still lack any real clarity, even today, about what genuinely happened in those private discussions. Arman's choice to stay silent about the incident, refusing to play victim or blast the UFC across social media or whine on podcasts, showcases his genuine professionalism in this brutal sport. But here's the haunting question that refuses to disappear. Does the UFC actually reward this professionalism and restraint? Or does it accidentally enable him to remain trapped in this frustrating limbo far longer than necessary if he was creating more public drama? The complete silence from both parties regarding that incident, the fact that nobody addressed it publicly in any meaningful capacity, only strengthens the narrative that Arman consistently gets left to handle these impossible situations without clear proactive support from the promotion. It's a subtle form of systematic undervaluation that accumulates over time and creates this massive perception crisis. Here's quintessential Arman Tsarukyan in all his glory. This perfectly encapsulates what makes his journey so captivating and infuriating simultaneously. He's a warrior who refuses to complain publicly, never releases medical documentation to garner sympathy like other fighters, and instead quietly embraces every challenge thrown his direction, regardless of how unconventional it appears. From mixed martial arts battles to jiu-jitsu competitions to pure wrestling matches, his eagerness to compete in any format completely defines his character as a complete martial artist. He literally purchased his escape from that purgatory we discussed, earning his freedom through consistent excellence and reliable performances across multiple combat disciplines. So why then, and this remains the ultimate mystery, does it seem like the UFC struggles to fully embrace and promote this incredible example of professionalism and warrior mentality? His proactive hunt for fights across all disciplines, his willingness to accept anything thrown at him, should represent a promoter's ultimate fantasy scenario. It perfectly embodies the warrior spirit that the UFC supposedly values above all else. Yet the perception persists, and it's impossible to ignore, that Arman frequently must battle twice as intensely as other fighters. First inside the cage where he consistently dominates, and then outside it in the brutal arena of public opinion and promotional politics, simply to get acknowledged for his unwavering dedication. It leaves supporters completely baffled by the apparent lack of reciprocation from the organization that should be elevating him as their model athlete. This footage presents one of the strongest arguments for the UFC despises Arman theory that's been spreading among dedicated fans. The historical precedent couldn't be clearer when examining the established pattern. Backup fighters eventually earn their title shots. It's practically an unwritten law in this sport, a fair reward for staying prepared and professional when duty calls. Yet Arman Tsarukyan stands as the glaring exception to this established pattern, the singular fighter who shatters the mold in the most devastating way possible. After stepping up and being completely prepared for the Charles Oliveira vs Islam Makhachev bout, executing everything perfectly and staying ready at a moment's notice, he got completely bypassed when determining the next challenger became necessary. The division descended into chaos, as the analyst noted, with endless political scheming and narrative manipulation. But what does that truly reveal about the UFC's dedication to rewarding those who consistently execute properly and honor their obligations? This transcends a simple missed opportunity in his career development. It represents a direct violation of the established pattern that has consistently played out for other fighters in identical situations, making it undeniably apparent that Arman has been uniquely marginalized by the system, despite fulfilling his responsibilities with exceptional professionalism that should have been immediately rewarded. He's proven himself as the legitimate #1 contender, and following the backup disaster that left everyone completely confused, Arman never wavered from his approach or modified his attitude. He accepted Dan Hooker in what was explicitly marketed to audiences as a #1 contender fight, a battle that would definitively establish the next challenger, and he delivered a dominant victory that eliminated all doubt. The analyst reinforces Arman's signature characteristic that distinguishes him in this sport. He never complained publicly and never claimed he was owed anything by anyone. He simply showed up to training every single day, seized opportunities as they materialized, and accepted every challenge placed before him. This represents the absolute gold standard for professional athletes in any sport, the precise attitude that organizations should be desperately trying to promote. So why then, after all these undeniable demonstrations of merit and professionalism, does the conversation still center around whether he sounds like the #1 contender and whether he deserves recognition, instead of it being officially confirmed and locked in by the organization? It suggests a continuing pattern of Arman having to prove himself repeatedly in ways that other fighters apparently don't experience, while others might receive faster and less disputed pathways to elite opportunities in the same division. It's this pattern that perpetuates the sentiment among fans of systematic bias against him that simply won't disappear. The case for Arman securing dibs on that backup position becomes crystal clear when examining the facts objectively. He's earned it through reliable performance at the elite level and unmatched professionalism that should represent the standard. The commentator then analyzes the absolute necessity of having a backup fighter for any major pay-per-view event, emphasizing the potential disaster and financial catastrophe if an undisputed champion cannot compete on fight night. This transcends a fighter's personal ambition or career development. It concerns the UFC's operational integrity as a business that sells fights to paying customers. So if the logical strategic choice appears so obvious to everyone analyzing the situation, why does it remain debatable weeks after it should have been resolved? Why does the analyst need to sit here articulating such a compelling argument for Arman's official designation as the backup when it should be automatic? The delay in finalizing this decision, the perceived lack of proactivity in formalizing Arman's role in this massive event, suggests a deeper systematic reluctance to fully empower him and provide the platform he's earned. It leaves many wondering if the animosity isn't overt anger or personal hostility, but rather stubborn resistance to his ascension that manifests in these subtle delays and oversights. Simply imagining Arman competing for an undisputed championship belt, even hypothetically in a backup scenario, highlights the enormous potential that the UFC has sitting directly in front of them with this fighter. The analyst praises him as someone who has maximized the opportunities they've been given better than almost anyone, specifically better than Sarukian's challenging path has demanded, and envisions him as a future locker room leader whose any rule set, any time, always accept attitude should be established as the benchmark for the entire roster. This isn't casual praise from a commentator, it's a blueprint for what an ideal UFC fighter should embody in terms of professionalism and readiness. So if Arman represents everything that the UFC should desire in an athlete, the discipline to stay prepared, the reliability to never withdraw, and an unbreakable fighting spirit that creates exciting battles, why does the organization consistently seem to fall short in recognizing and leveraging this ideal that they claim to cherish? The gap between Arman's undeniable value as a fighter and professional and his frequently contested path to divisional supremacy that should be straightforward perfectly explains why the UFC despises Arman narrative continues to resonate so powerfully with countless frustrated fans who witness this unfold. This segment transcends wishful thinking or casual commentary. It's a passionate call to action from the analyst, almost a desperate appeal to the collective conscience of the entire MMA community to recognize what's happening. I want Sarukian announced as the #1 contender. I want him to have dibs officially. I want that statement to be true and acknowledged by the organization. This isn't something an analyst should need to want for a fighter who has earned it repeatedly through his performances and conduct. The concept of spreading rumors through media and social channels to ensure that Sarukian gets recognized as the backup fighter is absolutely stunning when you consider it. It implicitly acknowledges that official recognition from the UFC isn't materializing naturally or automatically the way it should be. This collective effort from fans and media, this rallying cry that we're witnessing develop, represents the ultimate manifestation of the UFC despises Arman sentiment that's been brewing. The conviction that the organization won't provide him proper recognition unless fans and commentators force their hand through public pressure. It's a damning indictment of a system that's perceived as unwilling to reward pure merit and professionalism when it should be the simplest decision imaginable.